is the motor on the right side of the Excalibur scroll saw, and you can see this motor is mounted with 3 bolts into the side frame, and if you'll notice next to these bolts there's slots, which obviously tells you that it's some type of adjustment. Now I haven't verified this with Ray yet, so you may want to call him before you take this suggestion, but the web post that I saw said to loosen these bolts and actually pivot the motor until you minimize the front and back movement. If you turn it and you reach the end of the slot, you can actually remove the screw and move it over to the hole that shows up on the other side and keep rotating it. I had to go the complete distance of the slot all the way to one end. I could have moved the screws and turned it even farther, but I was able to get the adjustment I wanted right there, so that's where I stopped. So I did make this adjustment, and now my front to back blade movement on this saw is very minimal. As I was doing the adjustment on the motor to get the front to back blade movement adjustment completed, I put together a little dial gauge here so I could more accurately measure it. Probably wouldn't have had to go to this extent. I think just feeling the blade would have been sufficient. But I did measure it, and I think I started out at about 40 thousandths of an inch deflection, maybe a little more than that, and I'm down to probably 25 thousandths of an inch of deflection, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it really does make a difference in the aggressiveness of the cut of the blade. If you run your saw and you take a piece of wood and you put it behind the blade, you'll see some bouncing, and I'm going to exaggerate this like this. That's my real quick check. Besides just looking at the side of the blade, I can take a piece of wood and put it back here and just feel that front to back movement because it wants to kick the piece of wood back. And this right here is very good. I have no problem with this amount of front to back movement, and I can show you on the 2 DeWalts I have a type 1 DeWalt and a type 2 DeWalt, and both of them have slightly more front to back movement than this. The type 1's better than the type 2, but they both have more front to back blade movement, and they're not easy to adjust. This saw seems to be very easy to adjust. Next thing I want to talk about is the table of the saw. The table has a very good feel to it. It's nice and thick and heavy. It's plenty wide enough, and the depth of the table is fine. The only thing I'm getting used to at this point is the significant difference in the amount of table in front of the blade. On the DeWalt, which has been my primary saw for several years, there's over 8 inches in front of the blade, and on the Excalibur it's 4.5 inches. When I first looked at this, that concerned me a little bit because I was worried about holding my projects and having them tip off the table. So far that hasn't been a problem, but again, I haven't cut any real large projects yet, so that remains to be seen what I think about that. I do like the idea that the blade is closer to my eyes, and I'm able to see my cutting just a little bit better because of that. So this might end up being something that I actually like better than the DeWalt, but I want to hold off on that opinion until I've used it a little longer. Next thing I want to talk about is the quality of the construction of the Excalibur. Built like a tank, don't need to say any more. Everything is put together very, very well. Again, it's a 65-pound saw, which that extra weight gives you a lot of vibration dampening. They use plate steel in several places, and I couldn't be more pleased with it. I'm not positive this would be considered a production cutting saw. I'm going to leave that to the guys that do that type of work. I don't cut near as much as those guys do, so that will never be an issue for me. So I don't know how the bearings will hold up under 8-hour-a-day cutting, because thank goodness I don't have to cut that long. I don't think I could stand it. But anyway, the build quality of this saw is first rate. Now for the $24,000 question, how well does this saw cut? Again, it's going to take me a little time to form a complete opinion on that, because I've only completed a few projects on it and done quite a bit of test cutting. I haven't cut any jigsaw puzzles on it yet, but I have no doubt that the cut quality of this saw is going to be first rate. The projects that I have cut on it, I've been able to follow a line in the pattern without any problem. It's a very comfortable saw to use. One thing that is changed from this saw to my DeWalt, and that is on my DeWalt I had the table, and you can see on this one behind me here the table's pitched, and I did that because I thought it gave me better visibility. But I've noticed on this saw that because the blade is closer to the front of the table, I can leave the table flat and not have any problem seeing the front of the blade and following a pattern line. So that's become a real positive for me. Like I started out, I don't intend this to be a review of the Excalibur line of scroll saws. This is just more my first observations of the saw. I will say at this point I couldn't be more pleased with it. The few very minor issues I've had with the saw were all fixable and easily taken care of. The build quality, like I said, is excellent. The vibration, very minimal. The blade tracking is wonderful. The controls, first rate, have no problem with any of the controls, even though it took me a few cuts to get used to the blade clamp and tensioning. Once I got that down, I feel comfortable with that. So overall, very pleased with the Excalibur, and as time goes by and I develop more opinions about the saw, I'll try to come back and give you my later thoughts after I've cut more projects. I'm Steve Good. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time here at the Scroll Saw Workshop.